I was delighted to be asked to say a few words on the launch of the much anticipated Dasgupta review on the economics of biodiversity. First of all, I would like to thank Sapata Dasgupta and the dedicated team drawn from so many disciplines and countries who have worked so hard to create this report. It comes as the world grapples with the quadruple crises of accelerating biodiversity loss, a devastating pandemic, an era of climate change consequences, and for some countries, overwhelming debt. These crises are interrelated, and their solutions, to be effective, must be too. We can but pray that the impetus afforded this year by COP15 on biological diversity and COP26 on climate change will create the breakthroughs we so desperately need. Now, as we've known for several decades, we are being far too slow to realize that conserving and restoring our planet's unique web of life is not only vital for reasons of ethics and common sense, but also economics. The review by Sapata Dasgupta provides vital stimulus and insights that I hope will lead to changed perceptions and, in turn, redoubled efforts for the recovery of nature. Indeed, the restoration and regeneration of nature is not an option that we have the luxury merely to consider. It is a necessity, an imperative to ensure our survival. We have already reached the point where we don't have enough nature to meet humanity's needs, never mind the needs of the rest of life on Earth. It is essential we now move beyond conserving the last remnants of wild land and ocean, and also invest in the large-scale restoration of our degraded natural systems upon which we depend, which is why I am so wholeheartedly behind the efforts to protect at least 30% of our land and ocean by 2030. Nature is still able to recover if we give it a chance, but our window for doing so is closing fast. The Dasgupta review establishes without a shadow of doubt that the economics of biodiversity is the economics of nature. It is neither advisable nor actually possible to separate diversity from the other qualities of the vital living fabric of our planet's surface. Put simply, and something which one would have thought was blindingly obvious, without nature, there would be no life. Nature brings essential dividends for humanity, capturing carbon, providing food security, replenishing water, inspiring design and technology, recycling oxygen, inspiring the human spirit, and above all, promoting health and well-being. Just as diversity within a portfolio of financial assets reduces risk and uncertainty, diversity in ecosystems, in species, and in genes, in other words, biodiversity, directly and indirectly increases nature's resilience to shocks, so reducing the risks to the services on which we rely. The review highlights the many marked and institutional failures that lead to our failure to invest in the natural capital upon which our safety and ongoing prosperity depends, and that are instead fast eroding that asset base, increasing economic costs, and thus our vulnerability to future disasters. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is surely the moment when we must see the world as it truly is, and to find the means to ensure that economy and ecology are viewed as one rather than as now, where the latter is so often sacrificed upon the altar of the former. This is why last month I launched my Terra Carta as a way to put nature at the heart of our economy and as central to a sustainable future. Recognizing the fundamental value of nature, it is also why I established the Natural Capital Investment Alliance, which aims to make natural capital an investment theme across asset classes, while seeking to mobilize $10 billion for natural capital investment by next year. Surely, we urgently need to place our expectations of supply within the capacity of our planet to meet our demands and so price natural resources differently. We need, as my Accounting for Sustainability initiative has been striving to encourage companies to do for the last 16 years, to rethink measures of progress and how we account for them. GDP is one, albeit incomplete, measure of macroeconomic performance. Others, such as equality and health, must come to the fore. And at the microeconomic level, we must not merely account for shareholder profits, but also for corporate impacts, both on natural and human capital, that are so crucial for our societies and economies to thrive. Much has been achieved by the TCFD, and I have great hopes that the TNFD will ensure that the risks of misusing nature will be properly identified and so avoided. As Kristalina Georgieva, the president of the IMF, says, we must build forward better. To do this, surely we must rewire our economic and financial models to incorporate climate and nature goals into economic, fiscal, and budgetary policy, align financial sector regulation with climate and nature objectives, and most importantly, promote the greening of debt management in order to have a more realistic chance of supporting a sustainable recovery. We have long been made aware of the fiduciary responsibilities of the financial world, but in actual fact, all of us have a fiduciary responsibility to life on Earth, for we hold this planet in trust and have a duty of care that is absolute. Yet we know that day by day, strand by strand, we are rapidly destroying the fabric of the natural world for ourselves and for our children and grandchildren, and testing this precious planet to destruction. It is sheer madness to continue on this path. Sapata Dasgupta's seminal review is a call to action that we must heed. For, ladies and gentlemen, it falls on our watch, and we must not fail.
For as long as we've been aware of the damage humanity does to nature, there have been those who say we simply can't afford not to do that damage. And they say that the global economy and the natural world are at the opposite ends of a seesaw, and for one to go up, the other must inevitably decline. Well, I'm very pleased to say that with this report, Professor Sapata Dasgupta has well and truly knocked that myth on the head. He shows that far from existing in opposition, the economy and our ecology are in fact inseparably intertwined, two atoms in the same molecule. And he proves to us that going green actually creates more jobs. And that's exactly why we in the UK are determined not only to build back better from COVID, but build back greener as well. It is a comprehensive and persuasive text. But even at more than 600 pages, it represents only the first chapter of this story. Because today, Professor Dasgupta passes the baton to us, politicians, policymakers, business leaders, and civil society. He's shown why change must happen, and now it's up to us to bring that change about. I'm proud to say that the UK is already doing so, committing £3 billion of climate financing to support nature, for example, and spearheading the global leaders' pledge for nature. And that is exactly the kind of action we'd really like to see other nations joining us in taking. Because biodiversity is not just a nice to have element of long-term economic growth, it's essential to it. It's an intrinsic part of that growth. And that's what Professor Dasgupta's report is all about. I can't thank him and his team enough for putting it together. And it's a body of work that I'm sure the world will come back to time and again as we engage in the vital work of protecting, restoring, and improving biodiversity.
It's a great honor for me as a naturalist to join you all and Sir Partha Dasgupta today to mark the publication of his review that looks at the state of the planet's wildlife through an economic lens. In the past, I suspect that economics and ecology have often seemed to be in opposition. Indeed, there certainly have been times when actions based on narrow economic calculations have had catastrophic ecological consequences. But the connection between such factors is not always clear. Take, for example, the connection between the biodiversity of an ecosystem, the sheer number of species of different animals and plants in one particular area, and its inherent strength and health. Most ecologists know that the two are closely connected. They know that the health of an ecological community depends on its biodiversity, but they may have difficulty in explaining exactly why. Economists can explain that interdependence quite clearly. They will point out that any financial organization, when building a portfolio, is aware that the varying character of its investments is an important and valuable way of guarding against the effects on the group as a whole of a financial misfortune to any one of them. The same is true of the natural world. If a species is lost because conditions change, either climatically or as a consequence of a shift in the never-ending competition between species, the ecosystem as a whole is able nonetheless to retain its vigor. But has that good sense of maintaining variety guided us in protecting the biodiversity of the natural world? Consider the following fact. Today, 70% of all birds alive at this moment are poultry, mostly chickens for us to eat. Only 30% of the birds we now allow to live on this planet are wild species, from hummingbirds and eagles to nightingales and birds of paradise. Or consider a global problem of which politicians are well aware. How valuable it would be if economists were able to devise a way of measuring an asset that has one value to local people and another globally. The value of a rainforest to people living in or around it who wish to cut it down, compared to its value to people living across the world who rely on that rainforest for the stability of their climate. How helpful that would be. So, on behalf of ecologists, I welcome this hugely important, wonderfully detailed survey of an economist of the state of our planet in all its variety, and congratulate Sir Partha and his team on producing such a monumental and detailed work. It will provide guidance for both ecologists, economists, and politicians who have the responsibility through international platforms and on the ground to help avoid the disasters that currently threaten the very future of all life on this planet. Thank you.